Good morning. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Bersigar BG-1644. This watch is the same as the Pagani design PD-1644. Both Bersigar and Pagani design watches are made by the same factory. So I paid £100 for this watch and I bought the watch from Amazon. Firstly, let's look at the box that the BG-1644 comes in. The Bersigar BG-1644 comes in a matte black cardboard box, and the cardboard watch box is protected by this cardboard outer sleeve which is branded with Bersigar, as you can see. So this is the watch box itself. It's made from cardboard. It's branded with a Bersigar brand logo in gold on the lid, which one removes, and inside the watch is protected by this piece of foam, and also there's a second piece of foam with a cutout shape of the watch. So although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. One also gets this Bersigar plastic guarantee card, and I bought the watch from Amazon, so the guarantee card isn't stamped. There's no date of purchase or reference number of the piece. However, I'm pleased to report that the Bersigar BG-1644 is covered by a 12-month international guarantee, which is very reassuring. One also gets this user's manual. Now, this is basic, but it does detail how to operate the Seiko VK63 mecha quartz movement used in the piece. So a very useful read if you're unfamiliar with mecha quartz movements. It also details the international guarantee terms. One also gets this Bersigar branded microfiber polishing cloth, and I think it's a nice touch, bearing in mind that this is a low tier price point piece. It's only £100. It's always nice to get a branded microfiber cloth with a watch. Lastly, one also gets this jeweler's screwdriver, and again I think it's nice to get this included with a watch. The watch bracelet uses screw pins rather than push pins, so having the screwdriver included makes it easy to resize the bracelet to one's wrist size. So again, I think it's nice to get a screwdriver included. With regards to the watch itself, the Bersigar BG-1644 is a 40mm case. It has a 12mm thickness and a lug-to-lug measurement of 48mm. Now, I consider 48mm to be the perfect lug-to-lug measurement. It's the sweet spot. 48mm lug-to-lug will fit collectors with a 6 to 7 inch wrist, and also collectors with a larger wrist like myself of 7 to 8 inches respectively. So I'm really pleased that they've opted for a 48mm rather than a larger 50mm lug-to-lug measurement. Very good proportions for a 40mm piece. It's very close to the Rolex Daytona, which it clearly is an homage to. Has a 20mm lug width, and I really like the taper of the 40mm case down to the 20mm lugs. I think it's very well done. So with regards to the rest of the specifications of the piece, sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel. So really at £100 I think it's very good to get a sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel. It really does do the job of being a good homage to the Rolex Daytona with a ceramic bezel. Now, the negative of the sapphire crystal is that it lacks AR coating. There's no anti-reflective coating on the underside of the sapphire crystal. So if I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see that the sapphire crystal is highly reflective. If you're a collector that likes AR coating on watches, that's something you need to be mindful of, the lack of AR coating. Now, personally, I don't see it to be a problem, but however, bear in mind that it has a matte black dial, silver applied indices, and also silver subdials like the Daytona, which it is an homage to. The problem with the silver subdials and the applied indices is that when one tilts the piece at an oblique angle, as you can see, that highly reflective sapphire crystal means that it's hard to read. The legibility is poor on the subdials and also the indices because of that highly reflective nature of the indices, the subdials, and also the sapphire crystal itself. But very eye-catching piece because the ceramic is glossy, it's highly reflective, and also the sapphire crystal really does complement it. So very aesthetically pleasing, very nice to look at. Now, with regards to the text on the dial, I personally prefer the Bersigar version rather than the Pagani design version. I think the Bersigar brand logo at 12 o'clock is more aesthetically pleasing. It simply says Bersigar Chronograph and Sports. Personally, I would prefer if it didn't say Sports in red. However, the Sports in red is in very dark red, so it's not very eye-catching and it's something one could easily overlook. It's a date complication piece, and interesting choice of date window position. The date complication is sited between the 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock indexes. Now, that works very well because the legibility is good at the 4 to 5 o'clock position. The white date wheel is easy to read with the black numerals. As one can see, it's clearly the 8th of the month, so I like it. They've copied the Daytona hands and also the applied indices. Personally, I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a good quality homage to the Daytona without directly copying every aspect. For example, it has a date complication, the date window on the dial. The Daytona doesn't have it there between 4 and 5 o'clock. So there are some slight differences to differentiate it from being a direct copy or clone of the Daytona, and I think that Bersigar have done a good job of that. With regards to the case polishing on the 40mm case, the flanks of the case are polished to a flawless mirror finish, as are the tops of the lugs and also the underside of the case. And I have to give due credit to Bersigar, they have finished the case to a very high standard. Brushed satin finish to the underside matches the brushed satin finish of the solid stainless steel screw down case back. The case back is engraved with the Bersigar brand logo and the reference number BG-1644. And I really like it. I like the brushed satin finish. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing, and the laser engraving is done to a high standard. So the specification of the piece is engraved around the circumference of the screw down case back. And bear in mind that this is only £100. It's nice to get a screw down case back rather than just a pressed on case back. With regards to the rest of the specification of this piece, it has 100 meters of water resistance, and that's provided by hermetic seals of the screw down crown and the 2 screw down pushers. Now, I have to give credit where credit's due to Bersigar for producing a very well executed solid stainless steel screw down crown, which is a coin edge finish crown. The crown is signed with a Bersigar brand logo, as you can see, and that's beautifully laser engraved. It's really done to a high standard. Now, the crown is silky smooth. Often it's the case on low tier price point pieces like this that only cost £100. The crown threading is very rough, it feels scratchy, but I'm pleased to report that this crown is silky smooth when one unwinds it and screws it back in. It's very smooth to operate, and I'm absolutely confident that it would indeed provide a hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance. The pushers are also screwed down like the Daytona, so I'm just going to unscrew the screw down pushers to show you the operation of the chronograph itself. And again, I'm pleased to report that the screw down pushers have silky smooth threading. They're an absolute pleasure to unscrew. So when one presses the top pusher, it activates the chronograph, and as you can see, the second hand begins to sweep around the dial. Now, it doesn't sweep as smoothly as an automatic movement or a manual wind movement. The Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz movement does have a slight tick to the second hand rather than sweeping smoothly, although it is aesthetically pleasing to look at as it sweeps around the dial. So not as smooth as an automatic, but however smoother than the quartz, which ticks. So when one presses the top pusher again, it stops the second hand, and when one presses the bottom pusher, it resets the second hand to the 12 o'clock index on the dial. So the chronograph does work as one would expect. The Seiko VK63 is a very reliable, well-proven workhorse Mecha Quartz movement. It's been used for many years without any problems. But however, I do have to bring to your attention a slight quality control issue. If you look at the second hand, it doesn't reset perfectly aligned to the 12 o'clock index on the dial. As you can see, it's slightly advanced. It's not perfectly aligned centrally on the 12 o'clock index. Now, I have tried resetting it. There is a way to calibrate Mecha Quartz movements. For example, if you unscrew the crown and you press the top pusher and bottom pusher, one can recalibrate the Mecha Quartz movement to get the subdials to align and the second hand to align. And I did try to do that. I tried to recalibrate it using that method, but unfortunately, as you can see, it still doesn't align perfectly correctly on the 12 o'clock index. So that's a minor build quality or quality control issue. So really, I think it's the luck of the draw. Some Bersigar watches have very good quality control and some have poor quality control. And it really is the luck of the draw whether one gets a high quality watch or a poor quality watch. So with regards to the rest of the specification, solid stainless steel oyster style bracelet, solid end links which are very well executed, they're a good fit to the case. But however, I have to be critical of the bracelet itself. There's a lot of play, there's a lot of slack and extra articulation between the links. Where the screw pins go through the centre links, there's a lot of play. The problem with wearing this on the wrist is it rattles. It makes a very irritating rattling noise when you wear this watch, and it's a shame because yes, it's aesthetically pleasing. It does look like a Daytona oyster style bracelet with the mirror polished centre links and the brushed satin finish outer links, but that rattle really is very irritating. I would simply describe this as being a good watch on a poor quality bracelet, and it's a real shame. I think this watch would be more aesthetically pleasing if it was worn on a leather strap or rubber strap, because then that would solve the problem of this poor quality bracelet. So the bracelet rattles and the links are loose. With regards to the clasp, it is beautifully engraved with a Bersigar brand logo, and that's done to a very good standard. The outer portions of the glide lock copy flip lock clasp, they are well executed in terms of their finishing. The satin finish is good, and the mirror polish to the flanks of the glide lock copy flip lock is done well. But however, the flip lock itself is poorly executed with regards to the fit. If you look at the flanks of the flip lock, there's actually a sharp edge, there's a step, they're not flush. The flip lock doesn't fit flush to the flanks of the clasp itself, and that's the same case on both sides. You can see that there's actually a step. Now, another criticism I have of this glide lock copy is that it has sharp corners to the points on the edge. They haven't been chamfered off nicely, they haven't been deburred smoothly. So what you've got is you've got very sharp corners which would scuff a tabletop or a desk, and they would also scratch your skin if you caught your wrist on them. So very sharp corners. The finishing looks good initially, but if you rub your thumb across it, you can actually feel the sharp edges on the edge of it and also the corners, and that's on all four corners of it. So I would say that yes, it's aesthetically pleasing, but unfortunately the fit is poor quality. It doesn't fit flush on the flanks, and the other problem is the sharp corners and sharp edges. In terms of its action, yes, it does click down securely. There's a satisfying click as one would expect. The interior of this glide lock copy clasp is a satin finish, and that is very true to the original Rolex glide lock clasp. They did have a satin finish, and then they switched over to mirror polishing. The problem is there's a lot of play all round. If you look at the pin there, it's in shear constantly because it's under extra load in shear because of that extra articulation. The end of the bracelet is secured to the clasp with a copy of the Rolex EasyLink. It doesn't have a glide lock extension. It has an EasyLink type extension that one can pop out to give 5mm of extra length on the clasp. So I dislike it. I would actually prefer to see a glide lock type adjustment rather than this Rolex EasyLink type extension. It does click in and out to an acceptable standard. It is secure. It's not going to pop out accidentally. But personally, I would prefer to see a glide lock execution rather than the EasyLink type. Now, with regards to the finishing, I have to be critical and say the mirror polish finishing to the centre links is done to a poor standard. They're clearly machined roughly and then badly polished, because one can see the lines of the machining marks on the mirror polishing to the centre links, and that's throughout the bracelet. I really think it's poorly done. It would actually look better if all three links were brushed into a satin finish rather than having mirror polished centre links. Now, with regards to the end links, they are machined to an acceptable standard, and I really think they're a good fit to the case. So 20mm solid end links, and it is good to see solid end links on a £100 price point piece. So I'll give you a wrist shot and show you how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't resized the bracelet. I simply took the watch out of the watch box, and as you can see, the clasp does click securely, and there is a reassuring second click to the flip lock. So I'm pleased to report it does indeed fit my 8-inch wrist, and I can actually fit an index finger underneath the bracelet. So this watch would comfortably fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist with no problems whatsoever. Now, the 40mm case with a 48mm lug-to-lug measurement and the thickness of 12mm means that this fits very well on my wrist. Very comfortable, lightweight piece to wear because, as I've discussed, it only has 134 grams of heft. Not a heavy piece, and at 12mm thick, it's 1mm thinner than a Rolex Submariner, for example. So I really like that flat sapphire crystal. This is a watch that you could wear daily, and it would easily fit underneath a shirt cuff. If you wear business shirts, you'll have no problems whatsoever sliding that 12mm height underneath a shirt cuff. I really like the taper of the lugs and the mirror polished finish to the tops of the case and also the flanks of the case. Very aesthetically pleasing on the wrist. I like the glossy ceramic bezel insert and also those silver subdials with the Daytona style hands and the Daytona style applied indices. So comfortable piece to wear, feel good factor is outstanding, and it's just a good looking watch because it's clearly an homage to the Daytona. So I'll give you a Lume test, and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to its absolute maximum. Now, bearing in mind that this watch only cost £100, I don't have high expectations of the quality of the Lume, to be honest with you, but we'll test it and we'll see how it looks when it is fully charged up. So I'm just going to turn the lights out and then we'll charge it up. So I'm using a 100 LED torch, and this UV torch will charge up the Lume to its absolute peak performance, and we'll see how it performs. Right, so that's now fully charged. And as you can see, initially the Daytona style hands and also the Daytona style applied indices do glow brightly. I like the green tone of the Lume used. It looks like C3 Superluminova, but I can tell because it's not glowing as brightly as Superluminova, it is in fact Luminova rather than Superluminova. Now, unfortunately, there's not a very large plot to apply Lume to the indices and the baton style hands. The problem with that is there's not a lot of Lume on the indices or the hands, and as you can see, it's beginning to fade and fade fast. So initially glows very brightly in an aesthetically green tone, which is like C3 Superluminova or Tritium, which is now obsolete. But unfortunately, it doesn't hold charge for any length of time. So I would say that the Lume is acceptable, bearing in mind the price point of the piece. It's nothing outstanding. It's not as good as Seiko Lumibright or C3 Superluminova, but it does do the job. One can clearly see the Lume on the dial and also the hands. So I'll just turn the lights back on, and then finally I will surmise the piece. So what do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on this channel, I like the watch to meet two criteria. The watch should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So the price point of this watch is £100. Yes, it is excellent value. What do I think of the quality? Well, I can't say it's excellent quality because the bracelet is poor, but however, the watch itself is excellent quality. So I would divide the piece into two pieces. I would say the head of the piece is excellent, the bracelet is poor. And if you wear this watch on a rubber strap or a leather strap, that will solve the problem, and then it does enhance the piece. It becomes excellent quality and excellent value. So with regards to the value, this uses a Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz movement, which is made in Japan. And to get a Japanese made Seiko Mecha Quartz movement in a £100 watch really is exceptional value. The stated accuracy of that Mecha Quartz movement is plus or minus 20 seconds per month, which is very good, bearing in mind it's Mecha Quartz. It has a 3-year battery life, which again I think is perfectly acceptable. So overall, I think it's a strong specification because one's getting sapphire crystal, ceramic bezel and a Seiko VK63 movement, which is made in Japan. The case finishing, the polishing, the build quality, the quality control is good on the head of the piece. Bracelet is poor, as I've discussed. The only real criticism I have, and it's a minor criticism, is that the second hand doesn't reset perfectly when one activates the chronograph, as I've demonstrated, and I'll show you there again. When one stops the chronograph and resets it, unfortunately it doesn't reset perfectly. However, it's the luck of the draw. It may well be the case that when you buy your Bersigar BG-1644, it does align. So that's something to bear in mind. I really like everything else about the watch. I like the execution of the screw down pushers, silky smooth to wind back in, and also the screw down crown, as I've discussed, is silky smooth. So very impressive build quality throughout. The quality of the case finishing is done to an exceptional standard, and the most impressive thing about this watch is the quality of that ceramic bezel. I really think that Bersigar deserve credit because it's absolutely flawless. The numerals are infilled beautifully. There's no defects on the tachymeter. I mean, it's just done to a very good standard. It's the kind of ceramic bezel that one would expect to get on a mid-tier or high-tier piece, not on a low-tier £100 watch. So overall, I'm going to recommend the watch. I think that this watch is a good quality watch and it's good value. If you change the Oyster bracelet for a rubber strap or a leather strap, it will enhance the watch. It will right the defect of the poor quality Oyster style bracelet. I like it. I think it's a good homage to the Rolex Daytona, and I highly recommend it for your consideration. So I hope you've liked my review of the Bersigar BG-1644. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.